Beyond words, our souls collide in the rhythm where dreams reside. Beyond words, we touch the sky.
Welcome to the Beyond Words Deep Dive Sessions, an inspiring exploration of the book Beyond Words by Marsha and John.
Ever have one of those moments, where you react to something and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Like totally out of proportion to the situation.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
It's like there's this whole hidden script running in the background, influencing how we see the world and how we react to it. And that's exactly what we're diving into today with Beyond Words. You've shared some excerpts with us, and I'm so curious to unpack these ideas.
It's about self-awareness, for sure, but Beyond Words takes it a step further. They argue that understanding these hidden influences, these frames as they call them, is key to better communication with everyone around us.
Right, so it's not just about understanding ourselves better. It's about having smoother, more insightful interactions with, well, everyone, really. And they have this model, the P3RAC model, to explain how these frames get built.
Yeah, it's like layers, almost like building a house brick by brick.
Okay, I like that analogy. So where do we even begin? What's the foundation of this house?
Well, according to Beyond Words, it all starts with our environment. Where and when we were born, the culture we grew up in, all of that plays a huge role in shaping our initial worldview.
That makes sense. Someone who grew up in a big city is going to have a different perspective than someone who grew up in a small town, right?
Exactly. And it goes even deeper than that. Think about the unspoken rules, the communication styles, even just the general pace of life in those different environments. All of that seeps into our subconscious and starts to build those early frames.
So it's not just about what we're explicitly taught. It's about what we're absorbing from our surroundings all the time.
Precisely. And as we encounter these different environments, we naturally start to mirror the behaviors we see around us.
Oh, like that whole monkey see, monkey do thing.
Exactly. But it's not just about mimicking actions. Beyond Words suggests that we unconsciously adopt communication styles, conflict resolution tactics.
Whoa, even relationship patterns.
Exactly. All that gets absorbed and becomes part of our own personal repertoire of behaviors.
Wow. It reminds me of that story from Beyond Words about the mom who was super organized with her money, always budgeting and tracking everything, but then her kid ended up being the complete opposite.
Oh, right. That's a perfect example of how those early observed behaviors don't always translate directly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be a subconscious rebellion against what we've been exposed to.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've got the environment shaping our early experiences. Then we start mirroring the behaviors we see. What's the next layer of the house?
Well, as we repeat those behaviors, they start to solidify into beliefs and values.
So this is where those phrases we heard growing up come in, right? Like, money doesn't grow on trees, or always be polite.
Precisely. Those repeated phrases, those little nuggets of wisdom, they get ingrained in our minds and often become our core beliefs, even if we never stop to question them.
And those beliefs, they then directly impact our capabilities, the skills and talents we think we can develop.
Absolutely. Beyond Words argues that these early beliefs can be incredibly empowering or incredibly limiting. Ever doubt your own abilities because of something you were told as a kid?
Oof, don't get me started. I was told I wasn't good at math for years. It took me forever to even attempt anything remotely related to numbers.
It's amazing how these limiting beliefs can create these roadblocks in our minds, preventing us from even trying certain things. And Beyond Words actually shares a really interesting story about a photographer's son who...
Oh, right. The one who grew up surrounded by these stunning models and ended up feeling like he wasn't good enough to date anyone attractive.
Exactly. It's a classic example of how our early experiences can shape our beliefs about relationships, self-worth, all of it.
It's both fascinating and a bit daunting, right? Because it really makes you wonder how much of who I am is really me versus what I've absorbed along the way.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And this is where it gets even more interesting because all of these levels, the environment, the behaviors, the beliefs, they all come together to form our identity, that core sense of self. But there's another layer, the top of the pyramid in this model, and that's purpose. And here's the catch. With purpose, it's not just shaped by all those lower levels, it can actually loop back and change them, like a feedback loop.
Oh, interesting. So it's not a one-way street. Our purpose can actually reshape those lower levels, even if they feel, kind of set in stone.
Exactly. It's empowering, right? And Beyond Words gives this really cool illustration of this idea when they talk about our 9 essential emotional needs.
9! Wow, that's more than just the basics. I'm used to hearing about, food, water, shelter, that kind of thing.
All right, it goes way beyond just surviving. It's about what we need to really thrive. emotionally and socially. And they have this analogy they use, a motorcycle ride, that makes it really easy to grasp.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Lay that motorcycle analogy on me.
All right, so picture this. You're about to head out on this ride. The first thing you need is security, that feeling of safety, knowing you're taking precautions. It's like putting on your helmet, making sure you've got your gear before you even think about starting the engine.
Right. You wouldn't just hop on and go without that sense of protection.
Exactly. Then you need attention, and it goes both ways, giving it and receiving it. It's like being present in the traffic around you, being aware of other cars, pedestrians,
Yeah.
but also trusting that those other drivers see you too.
So it's about being seen and heard, but also being aware of others. Makes sense.
And as you're cruising along, feeling the wind in your hair, that's autonomy. Being in the driver's seat, literally. Making your own choices about where you're going, how fast, all of it.
Ah, that feeling of freedom. I get it.
Now, who do we usually want to share that open road with? That's where
Yeah.
community comes in. Having those people to share the journey with, like your riding buddies, making the whole experience even richer.
Yeah, the shared experience for sure.
But it's not just about any group of people, right? It's about feeling truly seen and accepted for who you are within that community. And that's where emotional intimacy comes in.
Being able to be your authentic self and still feel connected. That's a big one.
Sure.
Okay, so we've got security, attention, autonomy, community, emotional intimacy. What am I missing?
Well, even on the best road trip, with the best company, we all need a break sometimes, right? A little time to ourselves.
Oh, right. Privacy. That much needed time to recharge.
Exactly. It's essential. And then once you're back on the road, don't you ever kind of crave a little admiration for your sweet ride?
Yeah.
Maybe a nod from a fellow biker who appreciates your taste? That status, that need for recognition, for feeling valued.
Huh. It's true. We all want our efforts to be recognized sometimes. So what about that feeling of like, I did it? Like nailing a really challenging turn or something.
That's competence. That deep satisfaction of knowing you can handle whatever challenges the road throws at you. And finally, tying it all together, the reason we got on this motorcycle journey in the first place.
Meaning and purpose.
You got it. Knowing where you're going and why, having that destination in mind that gives meaning to the whole ride.
Okay, I love this analogy, but how does this all connect back to those frames we were talking about earlier? The ones we build based on our environment, our behaviors.
That's where things get really insightful. When we understand those 9 needs, we can start to see how they shape those frames, AD, how those frames influence the way we interact with others, especially when those needs aren't being met.
So someone who feels really insecure, maybe their need for security isn't being met, they might come across as overly defensive because their frame is one of constant threat.
Exactly. Their past experiences have basically taught them that the world is an unsafe place. Or someone whose need for attention is constantly being frustrated, they might become a chronic interrupter,
Yeah.
dominating conversations because their frame says, my thoughts and feelings are only valid if I can force my way into the spotlight.
So it's like their inner motorcycle is running low on fuel when it comes to feeling heard, so they're overcompensating.
You got it. And the beauty of this framework is it allows us to approach those potentially frustrating behaviors with more empathy.
So it's not about letting people off the hook for bad behavior, right? It's more about recognizing that we're all coming to the table with different needs and different experiences.
Absolutely. And when we understand that, it just opens up a whole new level of communication, really. It's like instead of just reacting to someone's behavior, we can pause and ask ourselves, what need might not be met for this person right now? Or what lens are they looking through that might be influencing how they're acting?
Yeah, that's huge. If we can at least try to understand where someone is coming from, even if we don't agree with their perspective, it makes those tough conversations a little bit easier to navigate.
Yeah.
But it also means, like, we have to do our own work, right? Like, Beyond Words talks about becoming architects of our own frames.
Oh, 100%. It's not enough to just identify those frames. We have to figure out which ones are actually serving us and which ones might be, holding us back.
It's like we've inherited this house, right? And it's full of furniture. And some of it is beautiful, it's functional, we love it. But then there's that one armchair, that's super uncomfortable. But we keep it around because it belonged to Great Aunt Edna.
Oh, I love that analogy. And with our mental furniture, we actually have the power to reupholster, to rearrange, or, even give some of those pieces away. But first, we got to be able to see them.
Right. And that's where self-awareness comes in, asking those tough questions like, is this belief even true? Or is this something I've just always assumed to be true?
And one of the best ways to uncover those hidden beliefs is to pay attention to our emotions. Those moments when we feel triggered or defensive or, way more emotional than the situation calls for, those are usually big clues that there's some deeply held belief or frame that's being challenged.
Like when a casual conversation suddenly goes off the rails and we find ourselves like really upset about it.
Exactly. Instead of just reacting, we can hit the pause button. Ask ourselves, what just happened there? What button got pushed and why?
It's about taking a beat to understand our own internal landscape before responding.
Exactly. And as we become more aware of our own, I guess you call them triggers, we start to recognize those same patterns in other people. It's like,
We're all walking around with these little subtitles above our heads, broadcasting our unmet needs and our frames.
that's a great way to put it. But here's the thing. Instead of getting annoyed or frustrated by those subtitles, we can start to see them as like opportunities. Opportunities for deeper understanding, for connection.
Right, like everyone's fighting their own battles, we just don't always see it.
Exactly. And beyond words really drives home this point that, we're all shaped by these unique experiences and perspectives. And when we can approach our interactions with that understanding, with a little curiosity, a little empathy, it can completely transform how we communicate, how we connect with the world around us.
It's a journey, that's for sure. Uncovering those hidden frames, figuring out which ones to keep, which ones to toss, and in the process, maybe building some stronger connections because we're approaching those connections with more understanding, more empathy. So as you go about your day today, think about the frames you're encountering, your own, those of the people you interact with. What's one small shift you can make to approach a conversation with a little more curiosity, a little more empathy? It might just change the entire conversation. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Give us a like and share your comments. Order the book via the link in the comments. Stay tuned for more.
Beyond words, our soul